Hi and welcome to my latest whisky review. Tonight I'm featuring two Game of Thrones whiskies in anticipation for the release of Season 8, the final season of Game of Thrones. I'm pitching the White Walkers against the Night's Watch. So we have Johnnie Walker White Walker, and we have the Oban Bay Reserve the Night's Watch, which are two of the 9 Game of Thrones whiskies released by Diageo. So the reason I chose these two whiskies is I first purchased the Johnnie Walker White Walker back in October when it was released for two reasons. One, I was new to Game of Thrones, and it was also a pretty interesting bottle, so it just caught my eye, and I thought it'd be a good whiskey to try. And the reason I chose the Oban Bay Reserve was because Oban was one of my epiphany whiskies with the Oban 14, and the fact that the Oban Bay Reserve is the best looking bottle in the range of the single malts, I went with that. So we'll start with the Johnnie Walker White Walker. It has an interesting bottle. It has colour changing ink, and they suggest that you put it in the freezer. I have done. I've put it in the freezer, and you'll see it reveals winter is here along the side. I'll put a picture up of what the bottle looks like both at room temperature and out of the freezer. But to help me compare the whiskey cold and at room temperature, I've already poured one here in the middle, which is the whiskey at room temperature. So I'll take off my No Nonsense Whisky whiskey coin, and we'll start by pouring the cold Johnnie Walker White Walker. This bottle's freezing. What you'll notice is how viscous the Johnnie Walker White Walker is from the freezer. It's completely different to how it pours at room temperature. But the liquid is very viscous. It's already making the glass cloud. It is chill filtered though, because the liquid itself is staying quite clear, even though the glass is clouding over because of the cold. So I'm pretty sure this has colour added. It might even say on the bottle. No, I can't see anything on there, but it might well be. But the Johnnie Walker White Walker has whiskies from Clynelish and Cardew, amongst others, and they suggest you serve it cold. It's 41.7%, and one thing I noticed when I've tried it before, it really does mute the nose. Serving it cold, you don't really get much out of it. I pick up a hint of that sort of grain alcohol vapour. That's quite strong. A slight hint of vanilla sweetness, but nothing much more. I'm gonna take the nose off the room temperature one, because this does give a lot more. So I get really sweet caramel. It's really creamy on the nose. Yeah, so it's much sweeter at room temperature because it gives so much more. There's a hint of cinnamon, maybe even cardamom in there. There is a cereal barley note in there as well. It's quite sweet, on the nose, but I'll taste both of them. We'll start with the cold one, which is absolutely freezing in this glass. Obviously it's come out of the freezer at -18, -20, something like that. It really does have an effect on the glass. It's really unusual. It's probably more for effect than it is for taste. I would say the typical consumer of this is obviously going to blend it with something, you know, make it into a cocktail. But let's try it on the palate. That's really weird. It almost tastes like somebody's put ice in it. It tastes really watery at first, which obviously it shouldn't, but I think that's the cold muting the flavours on the palate. But I do get, you can definitely taste there's malt and grain whiskey in this. There's a nice cereal note, but there's also that sort of grain, acetone sort of alcohol tang I'm picking up. It is sweet, but apart from that I don't really pick up on anything. Let me try again. Yeah, there is like a vanilla and hint of toffee, but it really doesn't give much away when it's cold. So let's try the room temperature one. It's obviously a lot more fluid in the glass. Instantly notice that on the palate, how it just flows in the mouth, whereas the other one felt like syrup. Pick up the caramel and the toffee. Picking up a hint of cinnamon. It's much more enjoyable on the palate. You know, just the experience, let alone the taste. I think it's quite alien drinking whiskey when it's quite thick and viscous. Reminds me of those sort of liqueur whiskies that you get. But I've just noticed it's becoming more liquid quite quickly. Obviously, it doesn't take long in the glass to warm back up. But it's actually not a bad whiskey. It's probably overpriced for what it is. You're paying a premium because of its limited edition. It's still available online quite readily, but it's obviously limited edition. It won't be around forever. But it's definitely expensive for what it is. It's an okay whiskey. It's yeah, it's okay. So, on to the Oban Bay Reserve. This whiskey I've had since February, but I've not opened it yet. This will be my first opening and nosing and tasting. So I don't know what to expect. The bottle and the tube comes with the oath of the Night's Watch. It's quite nice packaging. It's also got a map of Westeros, and it lists all the other Game of Thrones whiskies on the back. It does have colour added. You'll see it's quite dark, very sort of burnt amber. It's a nice colour, but they've obviously they've gone for that colour intentionally. It's 43%, and I've heard mixed reviews on this, but here goes. Right, so instantly I get like a salinity. There's like a briny sea salt. I don't know what that is. Aniseed. I think I'm picking up aniseed there. There's like a medicinal note to it, but I wouldn't instantly say that's medicinal as in peat. It's, you know, maybe cough sweets, cough drops. It's quite sweet on the nose. Getting caramel. That's really interesting on nose. Wasn't expecting those sorts of flavours. Let's try it on the palate. It's really light on the palate. There's a light hint of smoke. It's not too sweet on the palate. It's very light, but yet becomes quite viscous and oily quite quickly. There's a hint of pepper on the finish. Seems quite short on the finish, but let's give it another go. Yeah, I'm starting to pick up a hint of smoke now. At first it was just salinity. Now there's a hint of smoke. Let's try it again on the palate. It's not overly complex. It's starts off quite simple. As I said before, it's very light. It doesn't give much away. There's just a light malty sweetness, hint of vanilla that's not too sweet at all, and then you get a hint of smoke, which is really quite light. I think somebody who's not into peated whiskies or is trying to smoke the whiskey for the first time, this is a really light introduction. And then it has a nice sort of peppery finish that starts to build. I'd say it's sort of short to medium on the finish. It might benefit from a few drops of water, but it's incredibly light. So if like me you're looking forward to Game of Thrones, I would say unless you're a big Johnnie Walker fan, give the White Walker a miss. It's okay, but it probably doesn't justify buying a whole bottle. And if you're an Oban fan, like I am, the Oban Bay Reserve is a nice bottle, and especially if you're a Game of Thrones fan, it's probably worth adding that to the collection. The Oban Bay Reserve is still available at certain retailers, and I see that retailers are still getting them in from time to time, and the likes of Amazon have put a June the 1st delivery date on all of the ones that they're currently out of stock of, so they'll be back in fairly soon. So yeah, here's to the new season of Game of Thrones and Sláinte. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give it a like or a comment, and please consider subscribing for more videos like this.